My name is Major Steve LaValle. I'm from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Let me thank you for attending today and personally taking an interest in this beautiful historic site that you have here. I'd like to give the rest of our group an opportunity to introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Mark Piper, and I work for the Army Corps of Engineers, and I handle the cultural resource compliance, Section 106 process for the National Historic Preservation Act.
I'm Mike Layton. I'm the regional manager, which Fort Knox is within my region, with the Bureau of Parks and Public Lands. And I was park manager here for 10 years, and this is my 30th season, so I've been around the horn a little bit.
My name is Skip Varney. I'm the Director of Engineering and Real Property for the Department of Bureau of Parks and Public Lands. I've been in transition.
I'm Tom Distard. I'm the historian for this week is the Division of Parks and Public Lands, but as soon as the new merger legal legislation takes effect in a few weeks, it'll be back to Bureau of Parks and Lands. But that's why we're stumbling over who we work for, because the law's passed to change it, it just hasn't taken effect yet, so we're in limbo.
My name is Mike Johnson. I'm representing the Maine Historic Preservation Commission.
Okay, I think it's also important to acknowledge the other stakeholders, of course, general public here, but also the Friends of Fort Knox. Carol and Leon, would you please introduce yourself to the group?
Yeah,
I'm
Leon
sure maybe all
Seymour,
you
Executive
all know
Director, Friends of Fort Knox.
And I'm Carol Weston, Chairman of the Board, and many of the board members are here.
Okay, perfect. So I think I'll start with just giving a brief history of what led us to this point. Okay, I'm a project manager with the Corps of Engineers, and I'm working inside a program called VIDs, formerly used defense sites. Congress appropriates funds into, as I'm sure you all know, we have these, Congress appropriates funds into these stovepipes. VIDs being one of those stovepipes, they allocate a certain amount of money each year to these formerly used defense sites, either to tear them down, to preserve them in some cases, with specific guidelines for such preservation. In this case, I contacted the state of Maine because we had a pot of money for the formerly used defense sites, and asked them which projects would be a good candidate for FUD's money. Fort Knox came up as one of those sites because of some fall hazards here, and they had a certain amount of history, and the Corps has been watching this site since 1950. We have documentation where we do progress reports as our criteria for the FUDS program evolves or opens up. We can say we can do certain types of work, and we update that report over a period of years, really since 1950, to say that we would have an essential concept of rail design to help mitigate these fall hazards this year. And the state at that time asked us to further develop the concept in coordination with them. The concept lays on the table in front of you here. We're on version 12. Now, version 12 has been refined in coordination with both the Bureau of Parks and Lands, three gentlemen here that represent the Bureau of Parks and Lands, as well as the State Historic Preservation Office and the Friends of Fort Knox. So when you look at this in concept, because I've had a few questions already, what is the federal government doing here at Fort Knox? We're here at the request of the state of Maine to help mitigate some hazards and provide access to funds under the FUDS program. What we do as the Corps as part of this project is we'll provide project management and access to contractors. 2 weeks ago I had a contractor out here on site with our design team, and we went over the design. We already have a contractor picked out. It's a small business and a manufacturer that has actually previously designed a specialty rail for the preservation of Fort Popham. Now with that, Skip, I'd like to turn it over to you and we kind of talk about the internal process on how we developed the concept and how the customer evolved with the Corps of Engineers.
Basically what we did is we've been working in concert with all the parties here, everyone involved. What we did is we looked at the fall hazards, we looked at some of the history. Certainly Mike has a lot of history here as well, managing this site, the types of injuries that we looked at, and we looked at today's standards as far as the OSHA standards, what type of fencing, and we wanted continuity with our park sites or historical sites as well. So the fencing that we used or promoted was the same type of fencing that we use at Fort Popham. We actually modified it, and like the Major alluded to, we actually have gone through a lot of different iterations. We've moved fencing to accommodate the site picture to help prevent certain types of activities. But the key thing that we're looking at from the state is that we're really trying to prevent any type of future falls, and safety is really important for us. So.
One of the things you'll hear about the site, and you may have read in the papers here lately, is the project is going to have an adverse impact. There's a couple of categories, and I'm going to hand this over to you, Mark, to discuss the categories, so you know how we categorize it, so where we get to the category of adverse impact, and then we'll talk about those impacts a little bit.
Yeah, basically, whenever the federal government has a project that involves federal funding, we're required to comply with what's called Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. And basically, the purpose of that is to take into account the effects of the project on historic properties. So when this project was first being eyed as a possibility, the first thing we did was come out to the site along with representatives from the state and Mike's office and take a look at the fort and see where the hazards were and what would be appropriate. Now, Section 106 requires that you look at your project and you try to minimize the impact of the project on historic resource. Now, we knew early on putting a fence up would certainly be an adverse impact because there is some fencing on the fort, but in the areas where we were planning to put new fencing, it would definitely change the character of the fort. So we had decided early on that the fencing would be an adverse impact. So what that does in the process is requires us to look at ways to minimize the impact of the fencing. And some of the ways we've tried to minimize that impact is work with the state, Bureau of Parks and Land, as well as the Historic Preservation Office, and we've kept the Friends in the loop on our coordination as well. Some of the ways to minimize that impact is to reduce the fencing. So our original concept had a lot more fencing than what is currently proposed. We've reduced the amount of fencing, so that's one way we've minimized the impact. In some areas we're proposing to put planting in, which is another way, another deterrent to falls and some of those hazards. The plantings are shallow roots, so they won't impact the masonry underneath. We're looking. Another way that we've minimized the impact is by making it a gray color, so it would blend in more with the existing structure, as opposed to, we don't want it really to stand out. And then overall, basically, we've tried to keep it just to the areas where there's the highest incident or the highest fall hazards at the fort. And the fences themselves are only 42 inches high, and that is basically an OSHA standard that they have to be at least 42 inches high. So you're talking basically 3.5 feet tall. Yes.
What's